Hi, everyone. My name is Arjun Dev Arora. I'm the founder and managing partner of Valence Advisory. We support funds and founders with accelerating their efforts through strategy, capital, and people. Off to you, John.
Great. Thank you, Arjun. So John Lowe here. I'm an advisor at Valence Advisory. I collaborate with Arjun. I myself am the lead on leadership coaching and communications. Love it. Facilitate it all day long. And today we have a wonderful guest who is called Ullas Naik. He's a venture capitalist and founder of Streamlined Ventures. And we're going to dive a bit more into his professional and personal story. And to kick things off, Ullas, like to give you an opportunity to describe your current role with Streamlined and what you and the team are working on now.
Okay, terrific. Well, hello, everybody. I am the founder of Streamlined Ventures. We're a seed stage venture capital firm that's been around for about 9 years at this point. We've invested in about 130 companies to date. This is my third venture firm that I'm building. This one I started by myself, but prior to that, I also helped build a firm called Globespan Capital and another firm called Coda Capital, where I was a founder, but my other founders are building that firm. I've had investment experience now across about 400 companies at this point in time over the last 23 years of investing. So consider myself to be a pretty steady hand, having seen lots of ups and downs, and especially in today's environment when we're seeing a lot of downs, providing that kind of steady guidance to our founders.
Thank you. Thank you. And just because it's contextual in light of recent mass events, what is some of that sound advice or guidance you're providing founders in light of COVID and the pandemic? And or is that different? Is it case by case, or do you see a pattern?
Yeah, it varies by sector and stage. So, at the very high level, the general rule of thumb is to try to have our companies have 12 months of gross burn runway at the minimum. In most companies' cases, we're trying to push them to 18 months of burn runway. And I think so far we've done this work over the last 3 weeks across our portfolio, and I'd say 90 to 95% of the companies that we're involved with are in that mode of having minimum 12 months of runway, which I feel very, very happy about. Now, there's a lot of different tactics that one can employ. There are some companies where we are not concerned at all about the burn aspect of it because they are in sectors that are actually, because of this environment, growing really well. So sectors like healthcare, e-commerce, gaming, delivery are doing exceptionally well in this environment. Companies that are aimed at large enterprise sales or SMB sales are seeing much more elongated sales cycles. And so there, with companies like that, we are a lot more, there's a lot more scrutiny around what that gross burn looks like and how does one find a way to get to at least 12 months of runway until we start to see some of those sales cycles start to shrink. So again, like I said, it depends on the sector, depends on the stage, but the enterprise-oriented companies are probably the ones that are going to get more hit in this environment.
Thank you, Ullas. And yourself and the team at Streamlined Ventures, I don't know if you were on a remote working model before these recent events, but how have you, if you have navigated and become recently more 100% remote? Well, actually, not if you had to. How has that been for the team?
So we went to we have an office in San Francisco. We have an office in Palo Alto, and we were all working from the office in San Francisco. About 3 weeks ago, we went to a remote format. So we started to feel that the situation was starting to become a little untenable, and social isolation was that was being employed in other places was probably the right call. And then, of course, the state of California also instituted those restrictions about a week later. So we've been on it for a while, which is interesting and tricky, but I think we're managing to get through it just fine. We have daily stand-ups, and then we still have our team meetings that are 3 hours long, and everything is done over video.
Great, thanks. That's wonderful. And I was gonna also ask, just even you've obviously, as a steward of capital, you've been through multiple recessions, ups and downs, and you've been in the game arguably forever since you graduated. Regardless of whether times are tough economically or times are very bullish, What is it that keeps you in the game? What do you enjoy most about being a steward of capital yourself?
Yeah. So for me, supporting founders is a very, very big piece of why I keep doing this. I've been doing it, as I said, for 23 years. And we've had our fair share of successes and failures, and we've had big successes as well. But I almost don't care about the successes at this point. The wins don't matter as much as the journey matters to me. And what really matters is to be this resource to help founders build their businesses. For me, I came to this country very poor. I had no money, and it's the socioeconomic construct of this country that allowed me an opportunity to succeed and make it. And I feel that, philosophically, I live and breathe every single day to help this country and the socioeconomic structure continue to proliferate. And to me, founders are the lifeblood of that system. And so every day I wake up and all I do is live to find a way to help them. And these could be founders in our portfolio who I help the most, but also founders who are not in our portfolio. I'm always taking calls from people, if they're going through or facing a specific issue or something, to sort of give them specific solutions based on my 23 years of experience and 400 companies worth of investment experience.
Great, thank you. And I'd love to unpack that a bit as well, Ullas, because there's a lot of people who are using the terminology in the ecosystem, founder centricity or being founder centric.
Yep.
I would like to unpack that a bit with you.
Sure.
What specific behaviors as an investor and as a steward of capital do you think are commensurate with founder centricity? Rather than talking, what behaviors give you a good benchmark for that philosophy or approach?
So for me, it comes down to resiliency, integrity, intelligence. Those are the three things that I think are one of the key traits of founders who end up really changing the world that they want to change, right? And different founders take on different challenges for different reasons, but I think those three traits invariably end up creating successful outcomes for those founders and allow them to get through really difficult times or have the right mindset in good times. And so I think resiliency, integrity, and intelligence, I think, sort of eventually end up being the consistent thematic thing across all the successful founders. The founders that I've found sometimes who have not succeeded, sometimes, not always, but who have not succeeded, are those that do not, in the hard times, perhaps have the ability to sort of pivot fast, or have the resiliency to sort of go and get financing in some creative manner as possible. We are currently dealing with one of our companies where they had documents signed by an investor a week and a half ago, and the wire never showed up. And that's partly because they were just like, okay, we're kind of pulling back from everything. And the founder of this company had so much resiliency that he hounded those investors, brought them back to the table. We had to create some sweetener to get them involved. But because of that, it's that resiliency and that, again, intelligence, meaning the creativity with which he approached it, that allowed the company to get the wire. We actually got the wire today, which is now we're feeling very happy about. But it's those
congratulations
that are critical.
And wow, that's really helpful. Thank you. And also for you, like whether times are tough or whether times are good, my understanding, I'm not a venture capitalist myself, but arguably you manage a two-sided marketplace between founders and LPs, right? Other people's capital.
Sure.
How have you built it into your mandate or your practice or your professional discipline to get that right so that when times are tough, you are best equipped to respond quickly to your founding portfolio members and to provide support in the most frictionless way possible?
Yeah, I think communication becomes extremely important in difficult times, right? Which means that we need to be, our bread is buttered by our LPs. It's their capital that we're managing. We're the stewards of their capital. So they put us in business. So we have to make sure we're communicating with them regularly, transparently, in terms of what we're doing on behalf of them for our portfolio companies. And then you got to work extremely hard with the portfolio companies. So as I mentioned, in the last 3 weeks, I've literally been on conference calls morning to night with our entire portfolio on contingency planning and trying to figure out ways by which we get to minimum 12 months of runway, right? So that way, what I'm doing is I'm dispatching my duty as a steward of capital towards my LPs. And at the same time, I'm also honoring my philosophical pursuit of helping founders, or our founders and just other founders too, to make sure that they succeed and eventually thrive.
Wow, amazing. That's an intense workload. Thanks for sharing that. And also, because you work in a team and you have up and rising talent within Streamlined itself, what measures have you taken personally to be able to transfer your experience and your process to the next generation of stewards of capital?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that I'm, certainly keen on, interested in, and passionate about. One of our team members who's on our investment team sort of sits in with me on all of these planning sessions, right? So what she is getting the benefit of is all the learnings from my 23 years of experience, having gone through ups and downs, and to see sort of how in times of difficulty, one sort of helps these founders adapt the business model in order to, again, survive, to thrive, right? So if you survive, you thrive. That's really the play. I think she's getting the benefit of that. She's also getting the benefit of seeing how we have adapted our investment pace. So we've slowed down our investment pace. We're not heading for the hills by any means. We're sitting on cash, which is a good thing, because I believe there's going to be, again, being stewards of our LP's capital, there's going to be some really interesting buying opportunities for us sometime in the next 3 months, within the next 3 months. And so we are constantly still meeting with companies, because at some point the right thing's going to come at the right price with the right founders, and we're going to want to invest in that company. So we're open for business. We're slowing down. We're slow for sure compared to our historical pace. We'll be slow for, I think, the next month or two for sure, and thereafter, we're gonna sort of start to activate more. The other piece of this also is that it's a function of bandwidth, because if we're spending so much time trying to just get our portfolio companies going, we don't have as much capacity to look at new opportunities just yet. So, but Nikki sits in for us on all of these meetings, so she's getting the benefit of seeing how this playbook is enacted.
Great. And to clarify, you mean you're slower? You're still investing. You're slower in the sense of getting to your speed to conviction, whether yes or no. Is that what you mean? Or slower as in, if you are disciplined to an X number of investments per year, have you slower in the sense that, you've put that off and tightened the noose around there?
A little bit of both, I think. I think our decision pace has slowed a little bit. In the past, we would, our pace could have been like, including all our diligence, we would make a decision within, sometimes depending on the type of company, we could make a decision in a week to 3 weeks.
Okay, right.
Now it's elongated beyond that, because there's no real incentive to invest in companies, not until you have a really solid understanding of what the sales cycles are going to look like over the next 3 quarters, right? So until there's a bit of a fog right now around what those sales cycles might look like. So unless you have conviction on how we're going to get through that fog, we'll probably be a little bit slower, but in terms of getting to decision, and it will also be slower in terms of the number of investments we'll make in that period. And I think that I see that persisting somewhere in the next 3 months, and thereafter we'll reevaluate.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. That's really helpful. And I think I'm going to switch gears now, because we've been talking a lot in venture space, but we also want to respect that, venture capitalist investors, they're human beings too, with their own journeys. And one of the things you mentioned was very inspiring was you grew up in Mumbai.
Yeah.
You immigrated very poor states, and there was an ethos around innovation in the States and entrepreneurs that really inspired you, and something that you wanted to contribute and support throughout your life. What was that like, coming from Mumbai? I'm sure you were educated, you had a bachelor degree in chemistry, but you literally shifted cultures, didn't really know how things worked. How did you get yourself off the ground? And what were some of the key challenges or learnings you had that really helped accelerate that? Or was it just baked in to your DNA because you came from a really hard environment?
I think hard to tell. But I think the traits that I mentioned about founders is something that I sort of have taken to heart and had always taken to heart around, integrity and resiliency and intelligence, meaning the ability to sort of assess a situation and pivot as necessary. I think those things have kind of sort of been ingrained in me since my younger days, because we just have to sort of make do with very little to get to the point where we were doing okay in life. So when I came to this country, I mean, for instance, I had a really thick Indian accent, right? And when I landed at JFK for the first time, the guy at immigration couldn't fully understand what I was saying. And so immediately I had to like, okay, this has got to go. I've got to figure out if I'm going to make it in this country, I've got to do something about it. So I would watch newscasters relentlessly. I would repeat what they were saying, and I would adapt my tongue to sort of get that accent right, right? So things like that I started to do. I also started to learn about technology. I was an organic chemist in India at a chemical trading business out of college, and I had to learn tech. And so I started to do that as well. To get my first job, I wanted to get onto Wall Street, and I called the trading desk of a Wall Street firm, small Wall Street firm, 40 times, 40 days, until they finally took a meeting with me. And then I told them, just hire me as a temp, doesn't matter. And they hired me as a temp. And then 2 years later, I was generating a meaningful portion of the revenue of the firm. And so I think that goes back to the resiliency and all that. And it came from a variety of different places. It came from, hunger, desperation, and drive. It's like all of these things sort of came together. And because of that, and eventually sort of it all proliferated into what my life has turned into. But I don't think, even if I brought all of that to bear, perhaps in the India of the early 1990s, I don't think I would have gotten as far as I have managed to get in the United States. And I think that's thanks to the socioeconomic structure. Capitalism at its epitome is in this country. And without that structure, I don't think I would have had the opportunity to sort of grow as much as I did.
Well said, well said. And also you mentioned, a lot of your success was driven by necessity, right? And as you accumulated more and more success, professionally and personally, was there a point in where, when necessity was taken care of, was there a point where you had to spend some time thinking, well, what drives me now, right? Yeah. Like, was it contribution? Was it like, there are other facets of life I want to enrich and explore, whether it's a relationship, a sport? Can you talk through some of that with us?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Because of the inherent programming around desperation, that set me on a path and that lasted even after I had success, probably 10 years after that, because I could not dissociate and disconnect and say, okay, I can actually pause now. I can take a breath and think about broader implications. And because, in a way, once people are launched in a direction, there's inertia associated with that movement. And so I was in an inertial state where I just kept going, and I would move just as fast, operate from a place of seeming desperation, even though it wouldn't make sense. It was discordant with my current state at that point. But over time, I think, I have family and I have kids and all that. I think all of those factors start to play into it, and you start to then slow down a little bit, and you can, smell the flowers a little, and so on and so forth. And that's when you start to realize that, okay, there's actually, now it's time for me to be able to pause and see how else I can help and impact the rest of the ecosystem. And that's when I started thinking about sort of, what was it why am I doing this? What is the reason for me to do it? And I came back to this philosophical imperative. I wake up every single morning now, and my sole objective is, it's no longer pure capital creation for my LPs. It's capital creation for the LPs, but also proliferation of this system.
Great, so well said. And I forgot what I was going to ask next, but actually, yes, I was going to say, there's in the recent economic climate, setting aside mass events, we've seen a lot of emerging manager talent on the rise. A lot of people aspiring or in the process of strategically forming their funds. Yeah. In your experience and what you've seen, what are some of the things you look for in early stage emerging manager talent? What are some of the traits that make a manager really effective at what they do, both in the short and in the long term?
Yeah, I think I find that people who had experience with the entrepreneurial journey are naturally tend to be more empathetic with entrepreneurs. And that's an important input for me in who I choose as my co-investor, because I want that empathy. It's a really hard journey. It's super hard. I mean, a founder, people say this, it's a very lonely job, which is true. And I've been now in a founder role in many companies, and it's just, it's not like you can share with your co-founders all of your insecurities and all that kind of stuff. So to be able to be there for that founder when they need to speak about some of the issues, I want that. I also want people as co-investors who have the courage of their convictions to be able to provide harsh feedback when necessary. And I shouldn't say harsh, but like, candid, straightforward, and hard feedback as necessary to a founder where they might be doing things either based on, it's because it's bad behavior or because they just don't understand. And so to be able to sort of slow them down a little bit and communicate that empathetically and in a considered manner, I think is very important as well. So I think those two characteristics are important, that founder empathy as well as the knowledge of the entrepreneurial journey become very important as a new manager. I do think many new managers who have not gone through significant downturns are going to be a little more affected in this kind of a downturn, partly because they may not have the knowledge to manage their entire portfolios through this or experience. And then I also think that the market for funding those funds is going to, be tempered over the course of the next year or two because of what's happened. And so I think those factors combined will result in potentially a small shakeout in the number of emerging managers. But I think the ones who have, again, the same characteristics I mentioned about founders and also have this empathy towards founders, courage of their convictions, I think will make it through this.
Oh, so well said. Thanks for sharing both tactical insight and also values level insight into what you look for across the board. Just because we have only a couple of minutes left, I think one of the things Arjun let me know that was, I would say, is a talent or an eccentricity of yours would be dad jokes. Is that correct, Arjun? I've seen some of his dad jokes on Twitter, so
Father, I'm deeply grateful that you're sharing all of that. So I wanted.
Yeah. So we thought we'd give you an opportunity to share one to close this interview.
Do not put me on the spot. I'm the worst at being put on the spot.
Okay. Okay, but if you do, everyone, please, if you're watching this interview, please do follow Ullas on Twitter and scroll through his feed. I'm sure you'll find one. And we have 3 minutes left. Ullas, is there anything else you'd like to share finally in this interview? Because we're doing our part to enrich both the founder and funder ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I just want everybody to sort of realize that we are going through a hard time right now, but we're going to come out of it. We've been through hard times before. We're going to come out of it, and we're going to be, the environment will look up again. And this is a message more to founders than anybody else. It's going to look up again. Just be prudent and find ways to sort of extend your runway to get through this, and it's all going to be okay. Call me if you need me. You can track me down. I'm always available if you need me. And I think overall, keep a good sense of humor and stay safe. I mean, that's kind of sort of what I'd say.
Thank you. Really well said.
We appreciate that. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much for compressing so much in such a short time.